Ever since I made the jump from Xbox to PC, I've enjoyed the greater freedom and control a mouse and keyboard allows. When debates surrounding fairness and crossplay between consoles and PC come up, the main point of contention is, invariably, the advantage mouse aiming has over aiming with a controller. Where highly skilled controller users have to use tricks like extremely high sensitivity and fine motor control to be able to make micro and macro adjustments, all PC users need is a $40 mouse from Wally World and a decent sized mousepad. There are quite a few games that would be a serious challenge to port to a console thanks to the limitations of a controller. Sure, radial menus have fixed some of the shortcomings a developer might come across when porting a PC title with a plethora of keybinds, but some actions that are as simple as a single keystroke require multiple inputs to work on a controller. Lots of sim titles come to mind. Games like Elite Dangerous have seen success with controller input, while games like Escape from Tarkov would be nearly impossible to port over. On the other hand, I have found some of the complex keybinds and controls of PC games to be a bit cumbersome. Back to Tarkov, I've found it necessary to bind some actions that require more than one keystroke to a single press of a mouse button. And that's one of the great and grueling things about mouse and keyboard. You have 60 keys that could easily bind to 60 different actions, a bare minimum of 5 options on most modern mice, and an insane amount of combinations I'm too bad at math to add up. They can get confusing, and games like Tarkov benefit from user-made guides and shortcuts that help simplify default configurations. So, a mouse and keyboard offers an insane amount of control and options that a controller could never really keep up with. But of course, you're not watching a video on a channel that focuses on mouse and keyboards. When I started getting into VR, a similar divide between input methods became pretty clear to me. While the combination of a mouse and keyboard allows PC titles to offer insanely complex movement controls, VR replaces all that with the ultimate input device, your body. Technically, right now all that you directly control in VR is your head and hands, but most VR games worth their weight in gold do a bit of impressive math behind the scenes and guess what your body is doing based off the movement of these 3 appendages. Let's take a look at a mechanic as basic and OG as crouching. In games like CSGO, your body has, for the most part, 2 shapes, standing and crouching, and the game is designed around those shapes. Some jumps require you to crouch midair, and some angles benefit from you crouching around like you have zero regard for future used knees. By extension, most games let you stand and crouch, and some even go as far as to let you go prone. But the problem is, what about the in-betweens? Map designers have worked around the limitations of 2 or sometimes 3 heights available to the player. Cover can just barely allow you to peek your head over, while other obstacles might have a cheeky angle you can see through if you crouch in the right place. Tarkov has a mechanic that I personally love and use all the time. With a combination of the crouch key and a scroll of your mouse wheel, you have greater control of your stance, and by extension, greater control over what angles you can utilize to get an advantage over your opponent. In VR, all you have to do is have 1 or 2 working knees, and voila! All those years of dichotomous stances and input innovation are flung out the window. And there are tons of other complex inputs and frustrating shortcomings that VR got over with a few years of research and a few $1 billion. Just by tracking your head and hands, using the Q and E keys to lean, or the scripted set pieces that allow you to breach a room with a flashbang are suddenly moot. Now you just hug a digital wall, pull a digital pin, and watch all the work that went into making COD campaigns look fancy go down the drain. Games like DayZ have had keybinds for various actions since the good old days, and somewhat recently added radial menus to allow new players to wave hello or do other things. In VR, all you have to do is move your arms like you would in real life. No radial menus or keybinds required. Of course, some games are pretty much the same in and out of VR, save the added immersion your headset provides. Sure, picking up more than one object at a time in Phasmophobia is nice, but the trade-off is getting your back blown out all the more convincingly by a ghost.
Carol? Listen!
Zipping around as Pathfinder is pretty damn satisfying, and while games like Jet Island allow players the same freedom of movement, fast motions like swinging with grappling hooks in VR aren't for everyone. So I have to ask myself, is VR as much of a leap in interactivity over mouse and keyboard as mouse and keyboard was over the controller? Sometimes it's more fun to watch the animations devs spend hundreds of man-hours to get looking as good as they do. Yeah, some actions like reloading a double barrel are more satisfying in VR, but my janky cheating reloads in Pavlov can be underwhelming compared to some of the animations found in first-person shooters. Bashing in Left 4 Dead 2 is a useful action that takes a single key press, whereas pushing a zombie away in VR can get cumbersome after a while. You could always add a bit of personal flair if you missed the fancy animations in your favorite flat-screen games, but you have to take on the risk of looking like a total tool to outside observers. How much mileage you get out of VR kinda comes down to your personal energy level on any given day. You can try to match Kratos' ingenuity with a blunt object, but it's up to you if you want to put in the work when simpler inputs do the job just as well. Still, you can't ignore the amazing path we've set ourselves down with VR. A whole new world of interactivity and player input is, in some cases, literally at your fingertips. All it takes is a bit of creativity and a whole lot of game design to move on to the next big step in gaming.